Okay, so have you ever heard anything like this? I mean, I have to admit, this one really made me stop and think, you know? It's like, is this real life or some kind of movie? A millionaire bought a whole private island just for his wife because she wanted to wear a bikini.
It's definitely one of those headlines that makes you do a double take.
Right. So we're diving deep today into this article from The Independent, and let me tell you, it gets really interesting. It brings up all these questions about like influencer culture, and what even matters anymore in a world of like social media and everything.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
Okay, so the story centers around this woman, Soudi Al Nadak, and she's a 26-year-old influencer, lives in Dubai. She's married to Jamal Al Nadak, he's the businessman, and she calls herself a full-time housewife.
Which, I mean, I can see the appeal, right?
Yeah.
Especially with those kinds of perks.
Oh, absolutely. If someone handed me a private island, I might never leave the house either.
Yeah.
But anyway, Sodi's Instagram is basically like a masterclass in how to flaunt a luxurious lifestyle. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
She's got this whole video series even. It's called How Much My Millionaire Husband Spent on Me This Week.
I saw that.
And the amounts are just like mind-blowing. It's anywhere from like $50,000 to, are you ready for this? $1 million in a week.
Yeah, it's a bit much.
It's a lot to process. But it really makes you wonder, what's the point of putting it all out there like that? Is it to make people envious, or is there something else going on? Like, is she in on the joke?
It's a good question. Is it aspiration, satire, or maybe a little of both? I mean,
Yeah.
she has to know it's over the top, right?
Mm.
So is it a deliberate choice to get a reaction?
Right, exactly. And then there's the island. The article says it's somewhere in Asia, and it cost, get this, $50 million. And why'd he buy it? Because Sodi wanted a place where she could feel comfortable wearing a bikini.
Which is interesting, right? Because they're buying an island for privacy, but then they tell everyone about it on social media, and suddenly it's not very private. So is it really about privacy, or is it more about, like, showing off that they can have that kind of exclusivity?
It's like wanting to have your cake and eat it too, you
Right.
know? They want the freedom and privacy of a private island, but also the attention and validation of everyone knowing they have a private island.
Totally. And that kind of sums up this whole influencer world, right?
Hmm.
It's not enough to just experience something. Other people have to see you experiencing it too. Like, being seen is its own reward.
Yeah, I get that. And it's not just about stuff either. Like Saudi said in the article that she feels safe wearing a bikini on her own private island, which adds a whole other layer, especially considering like the cultural context of Dubai and everything.
Definitely. It makes you think about how, even with all the money in the world, there are still these societal pressures and limitations. And maybe buying an island is less about actually solving a problem and more about like a temporary escape from it.
Yeah. It's definitely more complicated than it seems on the surface.
Yeah.
And it really makes you wonder about like what true freedom even means, you know? Like if you can buy an island but you still don't feel totally comfortable just wearing what you want, then I don't know, it's kind of deep.
It is. It's about more than just having the money to do whatever you want. And things get even more complicated when you look at some of the other things Sodi said. Like there's this one quote where she's talking about why she married outside of her culture. And she's like, I only accept gold as gifts.
Whoa. That's quite the statement. Part of me thinks she's got to be joking, right?
Yeah, it's hard to say for sure. Like, is she being serious? Is she trying to be funny?
Right. It's like, what's the angle?
But whether she means it literally or not, it brings up this whole other conversation about relationships,
Yeah.
especially with influencers, and this idea of, like, transactional relationships.
Yeah, totally. Because when your whole online persona is about this super lavish lifestyle, does that end up spilling over into like who you date and marry?
It's an interesting question, because that line between what's personal and what's part of the influencer brand, it gets blurry, right?
For sure. And it makes you wonder if that carries over into their personal relationships too. Like maybe it's not even a conscious thing, but
Yeah, maybe. It's something
Yeah.
to think about. And it loops back to this whole influencer economy thing, too. Like, they're not just selling products, right? They're selling a whole lifestyle, the dream.
Exactly. And often it's a lifestyle most people can't even imagine, let alone afford. Like it's next level luxury and exclusivity.
Right. And for the rest of us, it's easy to get caught up in comparing our lives to that.
Totally. Which brings us to how people are reacting to this whole story. Some people think it's hilarious. Some are like, I'm so jealous. And then there are those who are just like totally turned off by it. So why do you think this kind of thing, this display of wealth, provokes such strong reactions?
It's because it forces us to confront our own values and ideas about wealth and status, doesn't it? We're bombarded with these images of the good life all the time, especially on social media. And it's natural to measure ourselves against that, even if we know it's not the whole picture.
It's true. Yeah, it's like this constant social experiment playing out online, and we're all part of it, whether we like it or not.
Right. And it makes you stop and think.
Yeah.
What's actually important? Do we admire this kind of wealth and want it for ourselves? Or do we question how it's accumulated and the systems that make it possible for some people to have so much while others struggle?
It's so easy to just scroll past stuff like this online, but when you really dig in, it brings up a lot of really complex issues.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of taking a deeper dive, right? You go beyond the surface level and start to uncover the more nuanced and sometimes uncomfortable truths underneath.
It's like, it's one thing to see these stories in the news, like, oh, another rich person doing something outrageous. But when you really start to think about it, it's kind of a reflection of our whole society, isn't it?
Yeah, it makes you wonder if we're becoming numb to it all.
Yeah.
Like this level of wealth and excess is almost treated as normal now.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe we're more aware of it than ever, and that's why we have such strong reactions to it, good or bad.
It's a good point. So we've been talking a lot about this story, the island, the lifestyle, all of it. But I want to leave our listeners with something to chew on. Like put yourself in those shoes for a second. In a world where everyone's chasing clout and attention equals money, would you be willing to give up your privacy to live that kind of life?
It really makes you think about what's truly important, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Is it worth it to have all the material things, the experiences, the attention, if it means sacrificing something as fundamental as privacy?
That's the million-dollar question right there. And maybe there's no right or wrong answer. Maybe it's different for everyone.
Exactly. It all comes down to your values, what you're willing to compromise on, and what kind of life you ultimately want to live.
So much to think about. Well, on that note, we're going to wrap things up here, but I hope this deep dive has given you all some food for thought, maybe sparked some interesting conversations. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep digging deeper, and we'll see you on the next deep dive.